Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ellen. So today we're going out to the desert. Yep. We're going to get inspired by a desert landscape. We're not going to paint it to exactly how it looks. We're going to paint it with more of an expression of a little abstract, as you see here, using some wet on wet and then wet on dry and just playing with the paint. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. I want to just teach you how to take photographs and turn them into something that you would enjoy. So maybe the sky is like a bright blue and you don't like that. You want it like a more neutral kind of sky for a painting for your home or a friend. And this is where I show you how to do that. Like I said, if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. Also, check out my Patreon. I have ad-free videos, traceables, exclusive tutorials, and a live stream in the top tier. It's just a place people go and support my channel. I also added a Facebook group page for my Patreon so they can post pictures and chit-chat and questions that they have with each other. You know, any kind of things that they're struggling with on Patreon that they're painting. Sometimes I stop in there and I leave a comment, but not always because I'm busy. So you can check that out right here. Boop. Without further ado, let's get painting a desert abstract landscape. Okay, so for this tutorial, I'm going to go over what I have for supplies. I'm using my Bohang 9x12 watercolor block. It's 100% cotton cold press. I'll be using Princeton 12 round Neptune series. It's like a brand new one, so you have a nice point on that. I'll probably be using a nice big flat wash brush like this 2-inch, this cheap flat wash brush. Maybe do like a nice wash in the sky. Whatever you have works for you. And we're going to be playing with colors. I give you a reference photo. So the reference photo has blues and then the desert kind of colors here. I don't want to do the blue. I want to make the whole entire picture neutral. We're going to do a neutral landscape using a reference photo that doesn't have neutral. And we're not going to actually be precise in all the little mounds here. So I'm going to just draw it out. And now this is like a, a 1/2 by 1/2 inch looking composition. And you can either choose, go halfway if you want, but you can go further down or further up. I'm going to go further down, right? So I'm just going to figure, taking my pencil, kind of going here and then making the little canyon mounds. Some little mountains going up and over and down, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Just kind of draw those out. See those kind of little funky lines, and then maybe make some lines going this way. I'm going to grab my kneaded eraser because I don't like the lines. If you need to use a ruler, do that, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Just give me a guideline to where I'm going to just change the colors around here, and I might just not even use that. There's like another little mound here, but basically we're going to do kind of more of an abstract kind of looking, you're looking at this. Maybe you have some purples and stuff like that, but I want to do more burnt siennas, yellow ochres, little grays, the sky, and I'll show you what I mean. So first I'm going to mix up some color. I'm going to mix up some light gray. I've got Paynes gray here. I'm going to add a lot of water to it. Okay, so I'm going to mix up a fair amount of this Paynes gray. Get it pretty wet, loose, and get it ready to do a wash. I'm going to take my 2-inch wash brush, put some water on it, take off some water, and I'm going to go across the paper where the sky is going to be, and I can go over this area to where the little desert formations are. I'm just start to play with some gray. I'm going to add it in. Just putting the gray across. I want a nice soft looking sky. I don't want a really harsh gray. Going over here and going down over my formations, just like so. Just putting that nice little soft sky in. Just a simple gray. If you want to get a little darker up top, you can do that. I just really want a neutral kind of color going in. Just a simple neutral color. You can get a little darker in some sections if you wanted to. Just like here, I'm going to go make a little dark sweeping kind of motion. And then I'm going to just call it a day. Like I said, I don't want to just fuss with it too much. And then we're going to just have to kind of let that dry, right? We're going to do some formations here that I have like burnt sienna, some yellow ochre, but we have to let this section dry because we're going to go in here, put in some like real intense color and then we're going to bleed some of it going downward. So I know you gotta have patience, and actually let it dry, sit. Just go have a cup of coffee, have a cup of tea, come back, and we'll start to do the formations. Okay, now that that color is dry, I'm gonna grab our brush. Okay, now that it's dry, grab our number 12 Neptune brush. I've got burnt sienna here. It's like a nice rust color. I'm also gonna loosen up some burnt umber, which is here. It's a little bit darker, and you can add some Paynes gray to that. Make it a nice deep dark brown. And I have yellow ochre here. And loosen that up over here a little bit. So we're gonna play around with these three colors. You might play around with a little bit of gray, right? And if your burnt sienna isn't, I'm gonna loosen this up even more. It's very bright, so I'm gonna dull it a little bit. You can add a little, you know, the opposite of red is green, but I'm gonna throw in a little Paynes gray and see how this dulls this just a little bit. Go back and add some more. Just dulls it ever so much. Okay, I don't want it super loose. So I'm taking my brush. I'm just gonna start to play with those little crevices I did. See, just pushing them down. We got some dry brushing going on here. Filling this little crevices in. Right? This is a very floppy kind of brush, but I like the point in the floppiness of it also, because when it gets wet, you can add a lot of paint to it. So we got that line going there. I'm gonna go actually fill this in a little bit more. And now I'm gonna clean it off. I'm gonna start to add a little bit yellow ochre here. Kind of go inside this a little bit. I know it kind of looks like a stripe or so. I'm gonna go back with the burnt sienna over in here and grab some of the darker browns and play around with adding in some darker browns with some Paynes gray. It's a little blackish brown here. And we're going to kind of water this down a little bit. And if you want to just take some gray itself, take the gray and water it down. Remember, we're playing with neutral colors here. Taking the gray, I'm just going to put it in here a little bit. I might go and add a touch of blue. So I'm going to grab some ultramarine blue, mix in with the Paynes gray, and put a little bit of blue in here. Just, you know, because blue, you know, the burnt sienna is like an orange color, and blue and orange are nice complementary colors, and just playing around with the blue a little bit. Just a little bit. Then I'm going to take the yellow ochre. I'm going to mix some Paynes gray with that. And we have this funky little color here, right? A little bit more. Again, I'm just playing with the colors that are neutral. We think of grays and browns. And I'm going to go again here, adding it, just going some dry brush going across, like so. Just like that. Doesn't that seem really simple? It does. It sure does it. This is just little, like little squares going up and down. I'm going here and have that dry brush effect because the paper has a lot of tooth to it. I'm kind of really digging how this is looking. Even just like this by itself, it's such a pretty picture, right? And you can start to put some details into the burnt sienna. Like I'm going to grab some Paynes gray, mix it more with some burnt sienna with the tip of my brush. I can try to do some little lines going downward to give it some depth. You know, like you see those little crevices. If you want to add, I'm going to grab the blue here. This is ultramarine blue, and it's a magenta or a pink, and you get a little purple kind of color. Just kind of making these lines going downward. Now it still might be a little damp, but see, I'm just putting a couple of lines going downward, indicate little indentations. And you can use that same color to add some depth over in here. See that? Little line down here. Get that purple color. So it's ultramarine blue, magenta. Because remember, we have this yellow color here. Getting a little bit color in here. Okay. I'm going to take my big old brush again, the number 2. I'm going to lift this up. I'm going to put something underneath it so it kind of leans. And we're going to start to play. I'm going to put water down here first. I'm going to have this kind of a leading. I did like the dry brush, but I want to play with bleeding the color. And I'm going to even touch all the way up here. Just tapping that a little bit, touching some of that color. having it bleed down. You could spray it too, but I'm just going to tap it with water. Tippy tap. It should bleed down to the water that's down here. Now it's going to really drip, so you might want to just soak some of it up with a brush. You could take a paper towel, but remind you that there's no water down here, so there's nowhere to bleed for that paint to bleed to. So you're going to kind of hold it and have it movement a little bit. You can kind of move some of the paint around with your brush, manipulate it a little bit. I want this like bleeding effect, which is great. It's kind of doing it already. You see a little bit of that blue. And you can kind of lift some of that paint up. Remember, this is not realistic. I'm lifting up some of that burnt sienna with this flat brush. Kind of moving that paint downward again. Playing around with that. Lift so it's lighter. You can go back in and add a little more color. There's that yellow ochre, a little thicker. Just tapping it like this, sideways. There's no right or wrong to this. See that little yellow ochre color? And because the desert could be less yellow and more like pinky red, like that burnt sienna, I'm gonna add a little pink to the burnt sienna. So it's peachy. Tap it. Start to play around with adding that color in also. Get a little more pink. This is a bright rose color I'm using. I'm just kind of tippy tapping it sideways. See where it ends. I might want to lean it on its side again so it bleeds kind of downward and on an angle. Getting that color back in here again. One more pass. Tapping it. Let's see how this looks. Move that out of the way. Really kind of sweet and simple, right? That's what I was kind of going for. If you wanted to add some purple mountains in the background, you could do that. I kind of like just the way it was with the little scarabs. And then you can go back in when it dries. I would wait till it dries. It's very, very wet. And we'll add some details. We're going to let this dry a bit before we go back in and add more details. But it's just a neutral kind of desert. It's my thing. I might remove a little color here. But I like how this is kind of blending. And like I said, you can take some of the burnt sienna, make some pink in there, which I'm doing. Minimal water here. Start to play around with adding in some deeper colors. That red, pink kind of tone that you see in the photograph. Going across. It might still bleed, so you might want to wait till it dries a little more. Going back in here, playing with adding the color. It's just a lot of fun to do something like this. You can just be careful not to overwork it too much. So I might take that pink again, that color. Go back in here a little bit. Some darker tones. And I'm going to wait till it dries, and then we're going to go back in and add a few more little doodads and call it a day. Really simple. It's like a simple landscape. One little effect I didn't talk about before it dries. If you want to do something like this, remove some paint, have this kind of cool sun shining kind of situation. Just a little bit, not too much. You don't want to overdo it. There. Okay, so this is fairly dry. It's still damp, but it's mostly dry. I'm going to take my number 8 Princeton long round. And if you want to put a little additional dark tone, so I'm going to grab that burnt sienna, a little Paynes gray, get a little bit darker, even more Paynes gray, so it's got a deeper brown. You can add some red to that again, and some pink. I'm playing around with adding some of that pretty, the pretty pink that I have, the bright rose, with my browns. See? You get like a pinky brown. And then you can pick some of those little lines that go down in the desert. See, little lines. Again, it's a preference. I'm going to push this downward. I'm not going to go all the way to the end, so it stands out a little more. Here, right? And then here in the front, again, you can use grays, yellow ochres. I'm just going to put some little lines going this way. Almost a dry brush technique. Again here, giving this more of a definition. But you don't have to do this. Just keep it simple and like abstract. It is kind of an abstract desert, right? You're playing around with all the colors here, mostly neutrals, a few purples. Getting a color in here. You can put some purple mountains in the back, but I'm doing like the little scarabs you see in like the mountain formations of the rocks. So they're like lines that go across. Some of them. And some of them you don't have to put little lines. Just leave it just like a little rectangular. It's up to you. I'm putting some dark little patches in here. Just a few, not everywhere. Again, this is just kind of like a neutral, fun little desert landscape. I do want to add some more of that purple. So I'll go back to my magenta and my ultramarine blue. Gonna mix in some of that brown. I'm gonna play with putting some of that purple in. See, I'm doing it on an angle like this. You get some dry brush texture going out this way and a little back this way. It's really that simple. And it's just like right now I could just leave it as is. If you want to put those little tumbleweeds or some other little doodads, you can put a little texture kind of going across. Like I said, it's up to you. Make those little lines in the desert. Just a few little dry brush marks coming out here. Oops. And then it looks like a cute little desert painting. That's it. I think it's just simple and sweet. The photograph shows all these little doodads. I mean, you can, don't go crazy. I wouldn't do that. I'm just going to go back in here a little bit more and add some more dry brush. Hear that? I don't like these lines right here. I want to soften them up a little bit. So I'm going to grab some water and just kind of push them around. Just a little bit. But that's it. I don't want to fuss with it too much. Over here, I feel like this is a little empty, so I might go and add some of those little lines, like I mentioned. You see in the rock formations. And you can add a little depth with some deeper color too. So we have our desert. It was really simple and easy to do. You have a really cool look, right? And if you wanted to put some purple mountains in the background, like you see in the photograph, do that. Mine's more of an abstract kind of situation. You can add some tumbleweeds. I just wanted like a neutral kind of fun, simple landscape. I might be tempted to go in and add a little bit of whitewash. I'm adding my gouache with some of my gray. Just a little bit in here. I don't know. I just felt like it was too dark right in that section. But other than that, I like it the way it is. So if you have any questions, leave in the comment section. Look at photographs for inspiration. You don't have to follow the exact colors. You can make it a real neutral kind of painting for yourself if you like that kind of color tones, and just play with the paint. And the greatest thing about the cotton paper is that the bleed. You see how this nice sky is like this soft, smooth kind of, there's no hard edges. That's what you're going to get with the cotton paper. You're not going to get that with the other kind of plastic type of paper, which is some of the Strathmores and Kansans. So that's why you would use this cotton paper. Same thing down below here. All right, so I hope this was fun. I hope you enjoyed it. And take care, and I'll speak to you soon.